Alright, my name is Tshenolo, I'm the studio manager, and thank you for coming, thank you all for coming. I just wanted to start with the land acknowledgement. We are gathered here on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Muslim people. And yeah, I'm really glad that we could all make it. So I would like to start off with letting you guys know what Photosoc does as a club. We are a collective of like students. It's a student-run club, and we have a bunch of services from equipment rental to studio services, as you can see. And we also have like the dark room where you can actually like print and scan your film, so on and so forth. So with the studio services, I just wanted to give you guys like a quick rundown of how to actually book a studio service, because I think that's, you know, something that some people might not be familiar with. In the front of the door, we have a poster that just came up, and we have like a little QR code. You can totally like use that to find the Google form. We also have it on the website, the UBC Photosoc website, and also on, I think, our Instagram page. I think it's on in our tree. So that's where you would basically go onto the Google form, and you would have the ability to like fill in your information and availability, and you can pick a time based on our window. And from that point, I would basically go through all of the Google form like bookings, and I would send you a confirmation. You would let me know what you need in case you might need an extra tripod, if you might need an extra like lens or something. We also work really closely with the equipment department, just because if a member happens to need like an entire body or an entire lens or something like that, it's possible for you to do that if you don't have one of your own and you really just want to learn and try. So yeah, that's usually how it works. The equipment stuff, like depending on what it is that you're looking for. For instance, okay, like if you need a whole camera, like a whole like body or a whole lens, then we would usually ask that you fill out the equipment rental form. But for the studio stuff, for instance, the strobe lights, the backdrop, the softboxes, if you want an extra tripod, we have one of those. We already have those, and that's part of the studio booking, so it's nice and easy, nice and simple. Yeah, so we are kind of just gonna give you like a little demonstration of how to actually set up the studio, which I remember when I was first a member, I didn't know how to do anything. So I'm really glad that we're able to kind of do this. So we're gonna have Nick and I, we're gonna kind of like co-present and show you how to actually use the studio, what you might need in terms of like how to pull down the backdrop, you know, the simple stuff, how to turn on the lights and figure out what it is that's necessary for like a good studio setup. So yeah, I think that is all, and we can start.
Yeah, so the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to pull down the backdrop. Right now we have two, sometimes we have more.
Yeah.
You can use these levers on the side, but also it's good just to have, if you're with someone, they can grab the middle and help guide it, because sometimes it can't bear. So you can bring it all the way out if you want your model to move back and forth, but you can honestly also just leave it hanging like this and have your model stand right here. Which would we like to do right now?
We can
just roll it out. Yeah, so it helps if you have two people, one to pull it, one to pull it out. Probably a little bit more. Okay, now that you've got that going, you're going to want to plug in the lights. So you want to make sure that you don't plug in too many lights to one outlet, obviously, or else that is going to cause power surge.
Okay, so these, we have 3 of these. There's one over there, one on that corner, and one up here. I usually, like, let's say if I want to change the strobe or like the softbox, you probably want to like take this off just because it is like, it could be a tripping hazard. And just make sure that this is completely off. It's pretty intuitive. It's literally like a switch, and you're able to kind of like turn it on and off. And in order to take this off, there's a little like lever right here, and you would kind of just like pull that out. Simple stuff. And we have 2 softboxes, 2 octagon softboxes. This one has a grid on it, and you kind of just like fit in the spot. And that's the clicking sound, that's important to make sure it's secure. And you put this back right on here. And just like that. Done. Put this back in the cable. turn that on. So we do have different settings, of course, in terms of how to, like, you know, control the amount of light that you want. So for instance, if I wanted like to have continuous lighting, there's a button here which is the mode, and you would be able to shoot on prop. I kind of like slope this around so you can actually see. So this is on prop, and this is kind of like half light. So some people like to actually shoot like videos with half light, just so you're actually able to like have a little extra light, but it's a lot softer. And that's when it's at 100%. And yeah, it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, depending on what you need for like the shoot. And we have other like settings on here, which is like S1, S2, which basically just means like you're able to control which light is which. S1 being like this is S1, that's S2, that kind of thing. And then the channels. So you would use this guy up here. This is the flash trigger, and what the flash trigger would do is it would make sure to sync the flashes with your camera. So this is like something that's pretty universal for most cameras, like Sony or Canon or Nikon, and it's pretty simple. Like it's like you kind of just screw that on, and boom, done. So you turn that on, and this is on TTL. We usually keep it on TTL just because it's like the simplest one, the simplest setting. And you would be able to kind of like, I'm just gonna swirl this around so it's not like in your eyes. So when you like flash it just flashes at you. And if there's multiple, you know, lights from different directions, you're able to like make sure they're all in sync.
So generally we keep it on channel 2. It's always going to be on channel 2, and the lights are usually already set to channel 2 if you're coming in here. If you need to change the channel, you just click this button and you rotate the dial and it'll go back to channel 2. So you want to make sure that they're all in the same channel, and that is how you'll be able to sync it up. So we kind of just went through some of the more complicated settings first. If this is your first time using it, all you really need to worry about is the strength. So this measures the strength of the light. It's measured in fractions, the lowest being 1/16 all the way up to 1/1. And that controls obviously how much light the light puts out. And you're gonna want to balance those between 1 or 2 lights to get your desired effect. And you also want to take your camera settings into account. So just going through those real quick. Since you're using a lot of light, you don't need to add any artificial lights. You want to keep your ISO the lowest it can be. So it's probably going to be 100. As far as aperture goes, because you have so much light, you don't need a fast aperture lens. You're generally going to be shooting at anywhere from f5.6 greater. I like to shoot at around f8 to f10 for my portraits. And the shutter speed, this is pretty important. So these lights are going faster than most cameras can read out after a certain shutter speed. So the max you can usually go is 1/160. Sometimes you can get away with 1/200, but 1/160. After that, your camera will get these weird black bars when you try to take a picture because it just can't read the light fast enough. So yeah, basically, you're gonna turn it on, see what channel it is. That's how you adjust the strength. You're going to take this thing. It has 2 on switches, so you're going to want to make sure both of them are on. And then you can just press the top here, and then you should get a little menu that comes up. So it says channel 2. This light says channel 2. There's also different letters for the lights. That's what we were talking about earlier with making sure which one fires first and one fires second, which is a little bit more complicated. But they should just display them on there, so you can say, okay, this is, you know, light A, this is light B. You can control it through here, but it's a little confusing if you're just starting out, so it's best to just do it on the light. Go up and adjust the settings there. Okay, so now that it's on channel 2 and that's on channel 2, you're going to want to just press the shutter. Okay, so it flashed, so we know we're getting an image. All right, should we do some test shots?
Yeah, totally. So usually, depending on the shoot that I'm, you know, working with, I like to have like either 1 or 2 lights on either side of the models, just so there's like universal lighting with like lighting from both sides. And sometimes I'll have a third one like right at the corner, and that kind of like gives you like a really nice glow kind of from behind, which is really fun and just really cute. But for now, we can probably just use one for now.
Just one light? Okay, yeah, sure. Obviously, to raise it, you just twist that, and once it gets to a certain height, it can kind of be unstable, so you want to, just one second. So it's it can be a little unstable, so you might want to put a sandbag or just your school bag on the hook to make sure it doesn't fall over. Okay, so this is called a softbox. Basically, it turns what we have as a hard light source into a soft light source. A soft light source basically is light passing through something or bouncing off it, and it gives you a less contrasty, more glowy kind of light. It's really good for beauty and that kind of thing, whereas a harder light source is going to give you sharp, very contrasty lighting, and it's good for products. Obviously, there's no rules. You can mix and match. Generally, for taking portraits of somebody, I would have 2 softboxes on, just to create, that beautiful little soft light sandwich on the face. Okay. As far as this is just a stand.
Okay, cool. And that's just like a light, or what do you
You could call that a strobe. I actually just learned today that it has a continuous lighting function. I didn't know that, so you could use it for video if you wanted to as well. But yeah, that's just a strobe. Okay.
A studio shoot might look like. Everything is kind of like based off of in the moment, like what you need. You play around with your settings. You play around with the settings of the lens. Of the strobes. And yeah, do you want
to take a shot? Yeah. Cool.
So some things that you might want to think about when you're taking photos is the ISO. That basically stabilizes the image. You're gonna want to think about your shutter speed as well as your aperture. That's one.
And those are all up to you, really. Just balancing those. Obviously, shooting at a faster aperture like 5.6 is going to isolate your subject a little bit more. So maybe you want to shoot at that if you're doing a headshot. And then if you wanted to do maybe a full body portrait, you could go up to f8. That's also going to give you a much sharper image as well.
Totally. And just to let you all know, what we have on here is a 17 to 40mm Canon lens. So this is a zoom lens. Basically, you're able to widen it or bring the frame a little closer. And yeah, that's pretty standard. We have different types of lenses. We have zoom lenses as well as prime lenses, which is basically you have to move in with the zoom, but that's basically how that works.
A good starting point is having your ISO at 100, your shutter speed at 160, 1/160, and then your aperture at f5.6, and then just adjusting your aperture and your shutter speed a little bit lower or higher, and that'll eventually you're going to get there, probably after just a couple of practice shots.
Yeah, and I just wanted to let you all know, depending on the camera that you have, if this is something that for instance, ISO was something that when I first started was tricky to figure out, depending on the actual photo shoot, whether I'm outside, weather conditions, that kind of thing. It would be for some people easier to just keep that at auto, and that's usually most cameras are pretty intuitive, and they have AI that they're built around making sure it can sense the ISO that's necessary. But yeah, like I said, usually keeping it up to 100. And I just want to show you, for instance, with some of these photos, that most of these have a really hard light coming from one side, and you really get the sharp contrast with the shadow. And in that way, depending on the type of shoots the type of photo that you're trying to get, if you're interested in the super harsh stuff, that's okay. And if you're interested in keeping it soft, you can change the light depending on either reduce the strength or have 2 lights on both sides, moving them back and forth, increasing or reducing the strength, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a good way to get a soft source is also to bounce. So you could bounce it off a white wall. For using, sometimes with a 3-light setup where we have a light on the ground at the back that shoots and bounces off the backdrop, and it kind of isolates the subject, creating a ring light. So bouncing and shooting it through stuff is the best way to get a soft source.
We do also have a reflector. That is one of the studio equipment that we have. Yeah, that's something that we have if that's something that you're interested in. Okay, yeah, totally, Joe.
I was just curious about what the difference between shooting with a gridded softbox and regular softbox is.
So that'll focus the light more. Gridded softbox is going to give you a more focused soft light source, whereas the traditional one is just going to give you more of a spread. Yeah. So if you are shooting raw, obviously you can leave it on auto and you can adjust that in post. But these, I believe, are daylight balanced, aren't they? So 5600, I believe, or is that how they 55? Some are 5500, some are 5600.
Yeah, so I think these are 5600.
These are 5600, okay.
And yeah, it all depends on like your own settings and what you are interested in. Of course, you can change the white balance on your own camera. And yeah, playing around with the settings, honestly, it's like when I first start a shoot, it takes me a while to actually get used to the model, the camera, the settings, the studio, and each time is different.
And generally, if you're shooting portraits, you want to stay in a longer focal length because they make your subject's face nicer because of the compression. So somewhere from 50 to 100. We have a couple zoom lenses in the office that are really good for that. Yeah, because generally shooting portraits at a really wide focal length kind of bends the face and it's not as nice, but obviously rules are made to be broken, I'm sure. You guys are creative enough, you can make it look amazing, so.
One of the questions actually that I remember is how to basically create color and how to use like the gels. So we do have gels, we do have like, you know, the light filters, the little square filters, and that is something that we've done in the past, we've used them in the past. The only thing with the ones that we have is if they're too close to the light source, they kind of melt. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, if you're interested in creating color effects in your photography during your booking, just let us know and we can like set it up for you. I've done it a few times, so like I'm pretty sure we can make it work for you.
We have the walls right over there. I pretty much just always remember not to plug in too many lights and not to put the lights too high without weighing something down. You don't want it to fall over. And try not to trip over the cords, but
Yeah.
that's kind of inevitable if you want to.
And just making sure that like for your own safety not to touch those strobes, like the actual bulb bulbs right after you use them, because they get hot. And yeah, oh, and another thing is we have, in order to turn these headlights on, the switches are right behind you right there. And they have like individual switches for some of them. And we also have like much bigger lights, which are for the entire room, just plug right in the back. So you can play around with that if that's something you're interested in. I usually keep this, like basically like this, because it's a lot warmer and it feels less clinical when you're taking, you know, photos. And the light is coming from like surrounding areas versus one big light coming from above you. So yeah, whenever I think if we don't have any more questions, the rest of this can just be like a quick social. If you have any more questions for us, you can come to us individually. And we also have yerba mates. If you would like one, please have one. We'd love for you to have some. And yeah, thank you all for coming.